I'm not good with the numbers, and there's one man who knows the numbers better than all the rest, and that would be Vitad. But guys, we're gonna be starting down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, on top of the red Protoss player from Team Liquid. He is MaNa.
And in the top right, as the blue Zerg for Shopify Rebellion, he is Lambo.
Good old Shopify, Zombie Grub. Big fan of Shopify, you know? Putting up a team, putting up sponsorship for all these, you know, StarCraft tournaments and everything, for DreamHack, making StarCraft a very, very cool game to be in right now.
They make it very difficult to not be biased for them, you know? Like, I see Shopify, I think yes. I don't see Shopify, I think no. They could sell me anything at this point, and I'd pick it up ASAP.
Which
if they want to
appropriate, because they literally are a place where you can go sell anything.
That's true. That's literally what they're created for. But if as soon as they make some like sick jerseys or like anything, honestly, all right, there's some weird things coming out in these Twitch commercials recently. I'm not going to bring up the specific one I'm thinking of, but I think everyone in chat knows what weird one I'm talking about that's come in recently. If they sold me that with a Shopify logo on it, I'd be like, yes, I will take 2 dozen, please. But for those who haven't gotten that Twitch chat, they're gonna be so confused.
I am one of the very confused people because I just subscribe to every stream that I watch. I'm like, I don't understand. What is this advertisement that you were talking about?
You're so like first world problems, dude. Sickens me. Sickens me.
I can't relate to the common person because I don't know the price of milk on the street anymore, and also I don't know what Twitch ads look like. Ah!
How much could a banana cost, Michael? $10.
Okay. Let me ask you.
Do
you think that Cyril has Twitch Turbo or subscribes to all of the channels he watches? Do you think Cyril watches ads?
I think Cyril doesn't watch anyone, so we can't be talking about anyone.
If I watch other people, their play might influence mine. I might get worse. Like, oh no. Yeah.
I mean, you think he talks about people? You think he watches people? He doesn't talk about anyone. Doesn't talk about Clem. Doesn't talk about Lambo.
He watches Zoogliang.
I've
seen him there. I've seen him in the course. But he's a sub there, I think.
Yeah, that's the only one. All right. So we have covered the first 2.5 minutes of this kind of normal PvZ. So you guys didn't really miss anything. MaNa always does the early pro block, all right? You wanted to talk about that, fine. But MaNa always does it. He loves blocking that natural hatchery. So this is actually par for the course. Everything is as I would expect from a PvZ between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're going to finally get those first 2 adepts moving on out to try and join forces kind of with the Oracle, either in the same location or to spread out Lambo's queens. But Lambo going for that more forward third base location is going to make things kind of interesting, as I think the adepts are already actually getting 1 worker and escaping on out over to the main base. This is I say, looking a little bit scarier for Lambo and potentially losing even just like 1 or 2 more drones, but good defense so far.
I mean, the adepts have already got to shade out, lock themselves in a nice little position, and then try and shade out again, but Lambo's not going to let that happen, taking down both. No rescout from MaNa. Not going to be able to save those, bring them back home, use them to defend the 3rd Nexus. Ultimately, I think Lambo's going to be happy with the exchange.
Indeed. But we just got more queens and stuff being added on. Lambo comes in, sees, all right, just more oracles being made right now, so I don't have to worry about Phoenix. I'm not playing versus Goblin or anything right now, but I do want to just make a quick mention of Goblin, just because Goblin has been a little bit infamous for going for a lot of those Stargate openings and stuff, or just Stargate plays in general as follow-ups. But MaNa, again, I mentioned this before, he did take a map off of Cyril, and it was with the big Sky Toss army. This is actually one of the really well-known maps, I think, from back in the day when Sky Toss was very popular on this map to go for.
Yeah, it was funny, you know, back in the beginning of this map, there was a lot of discussion about being Zerg favored because people thought it was long, and then, I mean, I didn't because I looked up the stats, like whatever. But then Protoss players were still picking it, and I was like, I thought they didn't like it, and they were constantly trying to go into the super late game, and I was like, well, I guess if you're gonna pick a map that you supposedly don't like, then you would try and play the, well, let's be honest, most abusive playstyle that Protoss got right now. Like, regardless of balance, that doesn't matter, guys. Zerg players go up against Protosses. Protoss build multiple Stargates. Zerg players not happy. They don't like it. So that's going to be MaNa's best bet here.
It is going to be that second Stargate being added on alongside a Robo, so we'll be able to get out some of those grind units and even just maybe an Observer or two or something. But starting up that first Phoenix now after having gotten out all of those early Oracles. So maybe just for cleaning up some of the initial overlords around the map, or how do you usually make that kind of transition into the big late game Stargate play if that's what he's looking for?
Well, it can really vary, actually. We've seen so many people try so many different pathways to the late game. We've even had a couple of really, really quick Tempest games, on certain maps. So, a couple of the choices do include right up into the 3 Stargates. Just go for it. Some of them include the more typical play of Stargates into like Charge or Mortal Archon, then into the Stargates at maybe a quickened pace. This game, MaNa adds on double Stargate to do more of like a classic trick, and that's to go into surprise double Phoenix, which I think would really throw off a lot of Zerg players. This is just not what you'd expect from a Protoss nowadays in general, much less if you saw the double Stargate, I think you immediately go into Void Ray thinking, and Lambo has actually not seen the second Stargate, doesn't know about the Phoenix, and is trying to pick up on clues elsewhere. How much armies are on the third Nexus, how much gas has been taken. And I don't know if those are really clues saying Mass Phoenix.
Now, we also saw Robo Bay being added on. I know I did see a few Protoss players go into like a bit of that Phoenix Colossus style, kind of bringing it back a bit from the good old days, but Fleet Beacon's getting added on. It looks like MaNa's not really prioritizing a lot of that extra Robo attacking unit production. I think he is a bit supply block right now, which does hurt a bit, but he's going to throw down all those pylons, catch a bit up. It doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of very direct army trades for a little bit, so he will be able to move past that. Okay.
This Mass Phoenix is kind of oversung a little bit. It is Phoenix. It is 5 Phoenix running across the map doing some damage. I mean, they still get kind of a shock here. The Queens are responding a bit haphazardly. The drones, a couple of them already fell. But one of the reasons that we see a lot of Void Rays isn't just because they were buffed, and it just makes sense to try and open up with them more so than other things into this style. It's also because they actually just are good to start things off. If they're going to go for a Spire and go to Corruptors, the Phoenix don't necessarily help a whole lot against that. The Carriers need to be in higher numbers to really help against that. The Void Rays cover it, or at least ideally. So that is something that MaNa will be missing from his composition as he does try and build into Carriers, which is about to be scouted, is the actual Void Rays to burn down these armored units. But he does get to go into Carriers pretty quickly on 4 bases, and he's included Disruptors, which I absolutely love. I saw that Robotics Bay earlier on, but it took a while for them to actually get started. I love Disruptors. They're so fun, they're so powerful, but they are, one-hit wonders. And sometimes they aren't even that. They just don't get a hit at all.
Yeah, a lot of Lings right now, a lot of them getting stasis trapped over here, which is gonna make things a bit awkward. Wow, after the third stasis trap, Lambo's just like, I'm not having it. Nope. I don't want any more of this. I'm out. Too much.
Yeah, that's so funny though, because you think 3 would actually be as many as they got.
There's a 4th.
There is a 4th, you're right. Stack defense is almost done. Lings are almost free. And there are the Corruptors sharking around, and an account of 13, although maybe not all of them on the front lines. It actually was kind of scary. Shield battery is finished though, the cannons are done. And just enough protection so far. Hello, Disruptor, what you doing there, buddy?
Getting a little bit far out there. That's unfortunate. Gets a shot off on the Queens, at least. There's something there. Another couple of stasis traps, and the Force Field's locking out the ground force. So now it's the Stalkers able to fight against the Corruptors, but the Corruptors in very high numbers can just snipe off the Oracle, snipe off one of the Carriers, and then back on out of there, because there's just not that much DPS against the Corruptors. The Stalkers do okay. Phoenix really don't do that great, and even Carriers do take a lot of time to kill those Corruptors.
The numbers just aren't there for MaNa. I mean, he really applied very little to no pressure on Lambo, and then he didn't really exactly get to a perfect composition. Like I was talking about, those Void Rays might have looked a little bit better than the Phoenix. They're now being added in, but I think it's just too late. Lambo is at an incredible economy, 94 workers, 5 bases, with I feel like a really great counter composition, which is just like, a good number of Lings with +1 melee, and then a lot of Corruptors, which are currently being on a Nexus, actually get the kill and might still take the fight as well.
Yeah, I think first he pees on the Nexus, then he poops on the army over here because MaNa's army is disappearing to the firepower of even just the Lings. The Corruptors eventually back on out since the Void Race had that Prismatic Alignment on, but now that the Prismatic Alignment's canceled, it runs on forward. Stalker's being warped in on the right-hand side. I mean, even if MaNa manages to hold this, guys, he's lost his entire Skytoss army. There's not a lot coming back from that. GG gets called, and Lambo takes the first game.
Not a very convincing game for MaNa to start things off, right? That actually could just be looked at and glossed over as like, well, he just tried to do a thing and didn't work, and then he got obliterated towards the end. That looked very one-sided. I feel like MaNa was hoping that Lambo would go for something a little bit different as opposed to just pure macro into... It kind of was into Link Corrupt there. There's actually very few Ravagers. But I guess Lambo was never scared, so he never like over-made a Roach defense. He didn't want to play into like a Roach Queen attack, which a lot of other Zerg players are doing, which maybe MaNa was thinking he could have been set up better for, and then was like, oh, he didn't do any of that. Now I got to try and go into super late game against a Zerg player that is just, I mean, the foundation was set so quickly for Lambo that he could have played around with a lot of different compositions and still went out with the enormous supply lead that he had.
Yeah, I think one thing you even mentioned before was just how against a lot of those Corruptors and everything, you oftentimes also expect those Protoss players to have a bit of those Void Raises, that buffer, or to, you know, not even necessarily as the damage buffer. It's like they literally do the damage to the Corruptors over there. And I do wonder what things would look like. Of course, it's easy for me to say in retrospect with all the information and everything, but I do wonder what things would look like if maybe a few Void Rays had been started up instead of those initial 2 carriers. You got out 2, maybe 3 or 4 Void Rays there, and maybe that defense looks a little bit better, or maybe it looks like it's a bit more possible before, you know, starts bleeding off a lot of those air units.
I just feel like something was supposed to happen in more of like the mid-game section, right? Like Lambo was supposed to be doing something else, or MaNa was hoping that, you know, he had faked Lambo out one way or another. It wasn't in the way that Lambo took damage, but if you can convince them for a long time that you're setting up for like a quick follow-up charge on Mortal Archon, then they might play more defensively as opposed to, again, right into those Corruptors, which Lambo just ended up doing the exact right thing. And I really think MaNa was hoping that he'd be a little bit thrown off one way or another, and he just absolutely wasn't. So that is a pretty quick game number 1. Game number 2 already here on 2,000 Atmospheres. In the top right for Team Shopify Rebellion, he is Lambo.
And down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, the red Protoss player from Team Liquid, he is MaNa.
Like, even the disruptors, right? Like, when you asked me what type of way you get into that late game, that was when the robotics bay went down. And I was like, you know, I'm going to talk about it a bit later, but then it seemed to be more important to talk about the Phoenix. It actually ended up not being. The Phoenix barely did anything. They weren't even in really high numbers. But I feel like now looking back on it, it's like even the robotics bay kind of told a different tale for what MaNa was hoping for, where maybe he was, again, hoping for more deception, like which way am I going, which card am I going to bring out here, because there are so many ways that you can follow up a Stargate opener, and if you're not being scouted, there's so many things that the Zerg player can assume, but unless they actually get in there and see like the actual number of Stargates or the actual timing of a Twilight Council or Robo, they're not going to know like for absolute sure, right? But Lambo, with like limited scouting, as I was saying, just like kind of off the third base scouts with the Lings, was still choosing all the right pathways. He was just macroing, really. And by the time he actually got a scout, it just, I think, confirmed what he already suspected, which was going to be some way into fast carriers. So he was already set up. There was no second guessing, which I think is really important. Like, if the Protoss can't do direct damage, you know, with a Resonant Glaives opener or, surprise 20 Phoenix, then I think you just at least got to get that Zerg player second guessing themselves and not just skyrocketing up the 90 drones. And that just didn't happen. Lambo looked so confident.
Yeah, I think what you're bringing up is a really good point. And Lambo is one of the players that I would say, as opposed to some players who I think are just kind of have their game plan, they're kind of aware of what other people are doing and everything. It's not like they don't do some degree of research, but they kind of say, this is my game plan, this is what I'm going to do. Lambo is one of those players I feel like is always very in touch with the meta, how his opponents tend to play and everything. And I have to imagine Lambo watched the series of MaNa versus Cyril, because I think just seeing like, oh yeah, MaNa took a map off of Cyril, and like, what did he do? Oh well, he went for the style. Well, Lambo, I think just being able to say, well, if I don't have a lot of information, there's a good chance this will happen. Like, let me be prepared for at least this option. It makes a lot of sense, and it definitely worked out.
If I recall correctly, didn't Cyril actually try and do a Queen Roach push or a Queen Hydra push or something along those lines?
I think he did. You might be right.
I think so. I kind of scrubbed through like all the games, but and I remember thinking like, oh, it's not really a surprise that MaNa won with like a late game composition, but I'm surprised he was allowed to get there basically. So I remember looking back on it. Considering how popular that is as a choice, I mean, it's not. Wouldn't be surprised if MaNa himself kind of predicted it.
Yeah. Well, we got another one of these Stargate openings, but like you were saying before, this can definitely lead out into like a lot of different directions. Let's already see a little bit of a difference from that last game, because it's Adept Stalker opening over here instead of just the double Adept push across the map, try and get some damage done. So Stalker can deny a bit of that early scouting information as well, while the Oracle tries to get some damage done. And hey, look at that. Oh, no Spore Crawlers.
Oh, wow. Lambo just entirely misreading the situation as no Spore Crawlers. You're right. He, I guess he had very, very limited scouting, and maybe his lings that are, I think now would see an Oracle fly out. Maybe they just weren't there at the exact right time.
Yeah, you know, I didn't think this is or was the case anymore, but I do remember a while ago, and Zerg players used to say, like, if the Protoss player, oh my god, okay, this is starting to add up a little bit. Another drone? Oh, it doesn't quite get it.
Oh my god,
Oracle survives? Okay, I was gonna say, sometimes the Protoss player, if they made a Stalker instead of an Adept, you're like, okay, it's not gonna be a Stargate, it's gonna be like Twilight or something. But I thought that was a very old way of thinking, and that's not really the case anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I actually think that's the way it went down. You know, as well as there was a time where we're starting Warp Gate actually like first and then Stargate was a huge trick, you know, because as soon as they saw a Warp Gate at a certain time, they were like, oh, it's not Stargate, because you usually go Stargate then Warp Gate. And then they stopped trusting that, you know, because they're like, yeah, they could just literally hide the Stargate if I'm only looking at the Warp Gate timing. So I'm with you. I didn't think a Stalker first would upset the Zerg scouting as much as it seems to have done here. I think we also have to add on that Lambo's second queen was just a little out of position, because you can cover your drones to a certain extent. If you think you know exactly where the Oracles are going to go, you can cover them without a Spore Crawler, but yeah, the queens are not there yet.
Very much so the case, and all those Oracles still alive and kicking, kind of continuing to harass. I think we're already at, what, 7 drones killed? Maybe gonna look for a stasis trap? No, just settling for a single drone at a time, because 2 queens that are not quite at the edge of that creep, not gonna actually be enough to push those Oracles back before they at least net a kill.
You know, as insignificant as it might seem, because it wasn't like, you know, 15 drone kills. Oh well, their Oracles was gonna die. Yeah, that was mismicroed. Anyways, I still like this game more for MaNa. It also feels like he's getting into carriers even faster, right? Well, he definitely is, because he didn't take that stopover on the Phoenix that just ended up not being very helpful. Now, does this mean that he's gonna win? No, I don't know about that, but I like the process a bit better. Lings were have the shield battery, and that does complicate matters. To one roach helping.
And it's like, I can't escape out as fast as everyone else. I think you will eventually get that cleanup. I also want to note something else that's really nice about this situation for MaNa. These Oracles are basically sitting behind enemy lines, behind the main and the natural. And they just keep diving back in and out of the main and the natural, which is usually where the tech is going to go. I think you have to be a little bit crazy and a little bit sadistic to try and throw down your tech at your forward third base. Like, that's a little bit crazy to do with, like, say, a Spire, but MaNa, in theory, should have an easier time getting that scout off, but funny enough, he actually still has not seen the Spire as it's starting to finish up. Yeah,
it looks like he actually got, like, maybe that was, like, a fake Spore Crawler, or canceled, rather. So, yeah, he doesn't know about it. The two carriers going across the map always makes people, I don't know, makes me a bit queasy. Like, queens can take that out, so be really careful, MaNa.
6 Corruptors, also great for taking that out, as they're going to be on the way. You still do need a decent number of them, but you know, funny enough, you were talking about the queens. Grease Spread not really connecting this base fully just yet. At a minimum, he might be able to get some damage done on this, if not kill it.
Yeah, that's actually kind of important. Lambo, I guess, using his queens so much on the defensive, right? These oracles providing even more value than what directly is seen by keeping the queens preoccupied. They're now late to the carrier party. More drones go down as they get focus fired. Oracles dip back into the natural. A recall is going to be used on one set of units. I imagine the carriers, of course, but the oracles, yeah, they might die. I think they've definitely done their jobs.
Does Lambo okay, Lambo remembers. Does Lambo remember the oracles were still there? Yes. He is going to try and chase him down, but that speedy boy going to be able to get out of there through the bottom right. And I think actually just keeping one oracle alive, so much value. It's a very low health one, so I don't know how long it'll last, but even just being able to have one or two of those revelations before fights are about to break out can really make or break the difference sometimes, and just whether or not you decide to take the fight, how you decide to take the fight, all of that stuff.
I agree. One oracle leaving is actually kind of even better than anticipated. Thought two oracles doing their job was like great, but one of them still living is fantastic. Shield battery is going to have to be used on this Nexus to give it a chance, but even with it, I'm not sure it's going to live. Corruptors just ramp up so darn quickly. Void Rays do come over, so it'll cost Lambo at least a couple. Okay, yeah, literally a couple of Corruptors, but I mean, Corruptors are expensive, sure. I still would take that Nexus kill, absolutely.
Yeah, and you top that off with the fact that he did delay the fourth base also there for MaNa. He's been able to get the cancel off on it and everything before. This is going to start to add up. Right now, MaNa is effectively just on a 2-base economy while trying to go into late game carrier Void Ray Sky Toss with disruptors being added on. It's an expensive composition. And MaNa does not exactly have a lot of economy behind it, nor does he actually have a lot of supply right now.
Yeah, supply block's really hurting, man. He's actually just building Nexus, not pylons. That's
Those will
eventually get
eventually.
supply blocked.
These are mineral efficient supplies. They have so many hit points. Like there's no way they'll be taken out.
Yeah, just keep building Nexus. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Finally, more pylons are put down, as well as some more static defense finishes up. I do think that this game is drastically different because of that, just like the pressure added up. The cleanliness of MaNa's build order, I think, was actually a lot better too. Just right into the carriers has worked out so much better than the little Phoenix thing that he did. And while there was one weak point where the Corruptors were out and the Void Rays were only at a count of 2, and Disruptors don't shoot up, I think the coverage of static defense made it a little bit too dicey for Lambo to try and push right then and there. So past that point, past that little hump for the Protoss player, I actually think MaNa is headed towards the ideal. He has gotten past the 150 hump. He's adding on upgrades. His Void Ray count's really good. If he can survive until max, that's where Zerg players all agree. This matchup sucks. I hate it. So that's where MaNa wants to get to. He wants to make Lambo actually over-dedicate, get a little too feisty, have this ends before he gets to max out.
Oh my god, that parasitic bomb. All of the Void Rays have 0 shields, but I think with prismatic alignment activated, oh god, that's gonna make it even harder for these Void Rays to split. Okay, these Void Rays are very low. I'm actually really concerned now for MaNa. All of a sudden, to actually be able to take a fight over here, he doesn't have the Archons finished up either. There's only one.
Oh my god, this actually was so quickly terrible for MaNa. That parasitic bomb lasted way too long. Queens will at least be taken up by the Disruptors eventually, but the Void Rays are just so weak, and they've already used prismatic alignment. It is up to the Archons to save the day, which it looks like they will. The Queens actually not offering that much support, and the Corruptors have to respect the Archons and whatever Void Rays are left over. So MaNa will live, but that was just that first fight was not a great sign. All right, like MaNa can't let that type of fight happen again.
Definitely agree there. I am surprised when I look at the units lost that it looks like MaNa has only lost 3 Void Rays and 1 carrier, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, that is an expensive set of losses, but I thought that could have been just a game-ending moment, like, oh no, these parasitic bombs have literally reduced all of your army's hit points to 25%. Like, that could just be it. But managed to survive, and he's regenerated a lot of those hit points. He has his Archons finished up. He has High Templars out that do have Storm as well, so MaNa has a lot of the tools he needs to continue forward, but well, this is still not going to necessarily solve all of his problems, as you see.
No, Lambo's doing an excellent job just keeping MaNa down, basically. MaNa can feel okay with 4 bases, but he knows that a 5th is going to be necessary. Some feedbacks finally go down, but it still ends with a Corruptor being lost, lots of probes dying, and yeah, that 5th base is, I think, the real tough point of this game. Lambo will get to do whatever he wants on his side of the map, but MaNa, he's never going to stop being attacked. Not the way the Lambo's playing, not the way he's working off of 96 workers.
Yeah, that economy is absolutely sick. And the nice part for Lambo also is that he isn't really facing a lot of pressure. So he's still not only has the ability to just start expanding to more bases and everything, but those are easy bases to take. He's not on some really small confined map where your 7th and your 8th base are just right in your opponent's face, right? You're actually still expanding kind of further away from your opponent.
Lambo does take a little bit of time to get his ultras together. He's also finishing up a ton of upgrades, but he can certainly afford all of them. And now it looks like he is ready to go. Vipers with a decent amount of energy. 1 week to a feedback, but that's where a lot of the micro decisions come in. Can MaNa be prepared? He's down 20 supply. Parasitic Bomb does go down, but Storm's also happening. And those Archons are tanking the ultras like a couple of bosses there. Carriers, though, can they actually get the remaining Corruptors? There's 20 Corruptors left, only 2 Void Relays, only 3 Carriers. I don't know if that was good enough for MaNa there. He just gets depleted in supply. And there you have it. Lambo with the 2-0.